There we go.
All right, we're on. Are you on?
Not yet.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning. It's a Thursday morning.
It's a Thursday morning.
It's already been a busy week.
Always. It's always
Which
a
is
busy week. When was the last time we didn't have a busy week?
I don't know. I was probably dead.
Maybe in like college.
Maybe. I thought it was busy back then. Anyway, all good. Oh, you know what I have to do is turn off the Wi-Fi.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
this month we have our free pattern as always in our newsletter.
Liz and I are going to get that newsletter out today.
Yeah, she's going to teach me how because she usually has to do it. Now
Right.
she thinks I should have to do it. Okay, so this month's free pattern is this. Jen made it with a fat quarter bundle from Robin Pickens' new salon online that ships next month. We are still thinking of this month.
It's October.
Okay, it ships probably the end of the month.
Sounds
Anyway, we are still trying to come up with a name. So if you have any bright ideas, please share.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because I need a name for the
But
pattern.
what I have to tell you is this is a really beautiful quilt. but guess what?
It's the back.
It's the back of a quilt.
It's the back of a quilt.
Because Jen she used the panel on the front. And I'll post pictures of the front of the quilt too later. But what she did was she took the big 40 stack of fat quarters and panel and did a complete quilt front and back out of them.
Right. So the whole quilt came out of that quarter bundle. And I used it all.
Yes. She has like no scraps.
No scraps.
And it's so nice and soft and beautiful.
Well, I use the wool batting too.
Oh, I can feel that.
Okay. I love wool. Anyway, but we're going to talk about how, because you know, sometimes you get a print, like, I mean, look at these gorgeous big scenic prints.
And the sunflowers.
That's not going to be fun. I mean, it's fine, but it's not fun chopped up little. So sometimes you just want to let the fabric be what it is.
Yes, which is how we get these gigantic
big sunflowers and stuff. So for this one, plus, you know, I don't love waste.
No, not really.
So we're gonna, this one is based on fat quarters. I don't know how many people like me. My stash is mostly fat quarter bundles.
Because they're pretty on a shelf.
Right.
Also because they're big enough chunk of fabric that I find them useful for just about anything.
Right. I can do anything out of a fat quarter bundle. I swear, my stash is either a 5-yard cut of background fabric
or a fat quarter
or
bundle.
a fat quarter bundle.
A couple layer cakes.
A few layer cakes and jelly rolls in there, but pretty much that's what I buy when I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with it, but I love it. Anyway.
But I love fat quarters.
And almost all your fat quarter bundles are going to have at least 20 in them. Unless they're a curated small bundle.
Well, or unless they're this one, and we're going to talk about it in a minute.
This is a little
So
one.
this is, please don't ask where you can buy this fabric, because the answer is I don't know. It's over 2 years old, and it's been in my stash at least
Right,
that
so
long.
we pulled this out of Liz's stash.
This is my stash talking right here.
Right.
This is 15 fat quarters. And so what we're going to show you is that this one, Jen made this quilt back right here. Jen made with 20 fat quarters. Well, I'm going to make a slightly smaller version with my 15.
Right. But, okay, with 20 fat quarters, I want to tell you what the finished size of this is. It's 80 by 88. Like, that is a solid full-size double quilt.
Almost a queen.
Right. So 80 by 88 is a good-sized quilt.
Yes. And with 15 fat quarters, it'll finish around 60 by 80,
right,
which is a fantastic
solid twin.
I'm a solid twin.
She's a solid twin.
So,
but the other thing about this too, I've just lost my train of thought. It's gone. Oh, I made it in a day.
Yes.
Guys, I went from folded fat quarters that were still in a stack to this sewn together and ready to go in one day. And that wasn't me being in my sewing room all day. Like, I had kids to take to preschool and feed and dance and, like,
yeah.
It wasn't a day I worked in the shop, but I still did it in a day. So what I mean to say by that is this is quick. You need a gift, like, quick, this is it.
Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is your fat quarters, you guys. Clearly, I do our social media, so I'm all over social media when it comes to quilty stuff.
Right.
And I see people post a picture of a fat quarter on their cutting mat, and it does this a tiny bit, like, you know, tiny bit to the side, and they give me a big fat, what the hell? Like, can't people cut fabric? Nice. And I'm going to tell you.
Fat quarters aren't perfect.
Fat quarters are approximately 18 by 22, you will almost never find a pattern that asks you to use the whole fat quarter.
If you do, it's
because those of us in the industry know fat quarters aren't perfect. Partially because, you guys, fabric is an organic product. When it gets folded and rolled, it shifts. And so you'll see that whenever we open up a bolt to cut it, the part on the left always, like almost never lines up perfectly straight.
Right.
And it's like, I swear we cut straight lines all day, every day. But then we fold it up and wind it back on the bolt, and then it does this.
Well, and then I go home and I press it, and I have to straighten it out before I really start cutting my fabric.
Anyway, so I'm going to tell you right now, if you're expecting a fat quarter to be an 18 by 22 inch perfectly square rectangle, you will be disappointed.
Every time.
Because this is a fat quarter bundle cut in a factory, and you will see that some are longer, some are shorter.
There's a lot of variation in there.
There's some variation in there. It's okay.
It's going to be fine.
And it's enough.
Right.
Okay? I've used several patterns that use almost every square inch, and I don't have a problem.
Right.
Okay? But I just want you to understand that this kind of variation, you guys, is absolutely standard in the industry. Even when we cut them ourselves in the shop and fold them, they were cut properly, square
every time.
And you're going to get them and you're going to think, what the heck? Okay? So, just as you know. Sorry.
But
pet peeve, sorry.
But it's also just information.
Just information. Fabric shifts every time it's folded.
What we're going to do here, and what this pattern will have you use, we're going to be using 17.5 inches by 21 inches.
So we've got
the fabric. So there is room to trim. Now, a reminder, especially for anybody who's new at this game, selvage is not fabric.
Even when it's printed.
Cut that off. Okay? It is more tightly woven than the rest of the fabric. So when it shrinks, it's going to shrink in.
And you will see those little holes in your quilt.
And you will see the little holes. But it's going to adjust in the shrinkage, and it's going to be noticeable. So cut that selvage off. All right.
Yep. Okay.
So how we cut now, because we're going to cut every fat quarter into a total of 6 pieces.
The same thing. You'll see this when you get your pattern. Guys, last night, because these have been in a bundle in my house for 2 years or so, I opened up the bundle and used a little best press and pressed it down. Ironed them very nicely, okay? Of course, you can see little bits of folds in them, but the point is, please don't full cut fat quarters until you iron them.
Press them. And because they've been folded probably in a factory, you're going to want some like starch, best press, something to really get it nice and flat.
Now, one of the tricks to doing this quickly, you guys, is we're going to cut like 3 at a time.
Right.
Because you can.
Because we can.
This is flannel, so it's a little thicker.
And it's a little sticky. You
can see you can't smudge. What's going to happen is I'm going to lay these 3 exactly on top of each other. And by the way, when you're doing this, you can see this. If you have one that's shorter than the other, and you're folding in a stack, put the short one on top.
Right. Whichever one is the smallest, you want that on top, because it would really be sad. Like you want.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn this upside down, because my bottom one's the smallest, and we're going to cut it on the wrong side, which is fine to do. But what it means is
we don't want to trim this off over here and be short, because you'll notice here this is almost a full inch difference. And that's because, I mean, some fabrics are 43 inches, some are 45 inches. It just depends. I mean, and this is within one fabric line by one company.
Yeah, these are all the same brand, same line. Okay, it happens. Relax.
All right, so what we're going to use...
I'm going to trade. Do you want me to cut?
Yeah,
you cut.
It's your quilt. You cut. I brought my 8.5 inch ruler because... I love it. So what
and I have a solid 21 inches from an inch from in the selvage, and actually it's 21 1/4.
Right.
So I'm good. I can square that up.
What she's gonna do is start out by creating 2 squared sides. We need them to be nice and straight.
So there's my 1 on the bottom.
Right.
And you'll notice I didn't start on the selvage, and that is because I wanted to make sure I had plenty going to that raw edge, because I had a shorter fat quarter.
Right.
And I'm going to check under my layers here and make sure
it's all there.
All good. And I'm going to cut about 1/4 inch off here. Okay, which the pattern gives us an extra.
We have the room for that. Okay.
We should have plenty.
Don't go whacking off 1/2 inch, because you'll be in trouble.
No. Okay. Enough to make it square.
So now we have these 2 nice straight sides. What we're going to do is cut 3 rows. The first one, we go this way.
Oh.
The first one is 8.5 inches wide, which is why it's awesome
me go the other way.
that I brought my 8.5 inch ruler.
Okay, you guys, a year and a half ago, I think, bought myself an 8.5 inch ruler because I had a border on a quilt that was like 8 inches, and I wanted to, and I knew I was gonna have to square it up really nice, and then I wouldn't have to guess. Okay.
Right.
So I bought myself an 8.5 inch ruler, thinking I will use this thing once. Guess what?
I use it all the time. All the time. Okay, so we're just gonna scoot that over, and now she's gonna cut a 5.5 inch strip.
Thought we cut these the other direction. No.
Nope. Well, we will in a minute. Patience. And now you're going to cut a 3.5 inch strip.
Jen wrote the pattern, I didn't, so, you know.
And I didn't bring it with me, so.
So, but look, see guys, I have over almost a 1/2 inch there.
Right.
So we're solidly good.
We're solid. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to cut two 10.5 inch rectangles out of each fabric. I'm going to
Shift these, because that's what I do.
Right, move things around. And then I like to, because I don't like to use my mat more than I absolutely have to.
Actually, do you want to move that machine a little bit?
I'm going to scoot it out of your way so that you can use the
I'm
ruler.
going to use this. So that's why we cut the 8.5 direction first, you guys, and not the 10.5. We could have just cut two 10.5 inch strips and subcut them. But because
then I'd have to use my mat to measure.
We have the ruler
and
instead
especially,
of the mat.
And part of the reason I don't want to use my mat to measure is because we're cutting multiple layers. And so things are more likely to shift. So I just want to use the ruler. And so that's why I have her do the strips.
And I have a solid inch on this side.
Right.
We're good.
Solid.
And I'm going to be handing these piles of salvages to Vicky to put in dog beds.
Right. Here you go, Humane Society.
Yeah. We don't really need the machine today because we were mostly just going to cut this out.
We're just talking about cutting. Because when it comes to actually putting this quilt together,
I'm going to go home and lay it out all on my design wall.
right.
And then sew
Play with
together.
it. You know.
After I finish my candies because my 4-year-old
Now,
is
you'll
gonna be a hard time.
notice that some of them are partial blocks and some are full. This one's been trimmed down a bit more.
Because
Like
it's a
these
quilt
were the
back.
full ones, but that's because it was a quilt back. You know, so it had to be bigger than the front, so I could long arm it. So when you get the pattern, you'll see that they are stacked so these are half blocks on the end. So what you're going to do with each row as you place them is you're going to take one of your blocks like this. I'm going to steal one. And you're going to end up cutting that in half. So you can put half at one end and half at the other. Now, you're probably going to think, hey Jen, but that means we had an extra seam, and that means this row that isn't a half block is too long.
But there's only a seam on one side.
And you are absolutely right. So what I'll have you do, it'll be written in the pattern so you don't have to remember anything, is that these rows where we don't cut a block in half for each side, just trim off 1/2 inch at the end of the row. That's it. Easy peasy.
Nothing.
So, and I'm going to tell you to trim it and pin, because otherwise it's like floating borders and things are just going to smush around and you're going to have some that are looser and some that are tighter. So, pin the centers, pin the edges, work in the middle. But if you've trimmed off 1/2 inch on the end of each of the rows that don't have half blocks on the ends, your rows are going to end up the same size. And don't worry, that's all written in the pattern.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
But like I said, if you have ideas for pattern names, we are taking
Oh my
suggestions.
goodness, I would
this morning.
love some suggestions. Now, granted, it was like late at night last night when I was trying to think of pattern names while I'm typing up the pattern, and my head, you know, my eye is starting to twitch from my headache. And I was like, this isn't happening. No. Once the eyes start twitching, you just call it a day. Go to bed.
It's time to go to bed. Can't. We'll see you later.
Right. There's really not a lot of coming back from that for me.
Nope.
What are you doing?
Cutting 8.5 inch strips.
Why?
Because you told me to.
No, you did one 8.5. Now a 5.5.
Oh.
Now a 3.5.
Duh. This is why she's here.
That's why I'm here.
I don't write the pattern.
Well, and I didn't give her a written copy of the pattern.
That either. I'm doing it from memory.
You're doing it from my memory.
Which is great.
Which is fabulous.
But contrary to popular opinion, I can't actually read her memories.
Right. She can't quite read my mind.
So,
I mean, we're pretty good, but we're not that good. But we'll get this pattern up. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter.
Okay, there are some ways to do it. If the website gives you fits, let me know.
Right.
The sign-up's at the bottom of our homepage. Go to jkquilts.com, scroll to the bottom, put your name and number in there. If you have signed up before, you may get an invalid...
Yeah, if you've signed up before...
It might say invalid submission, but if you have signed up before and you're not getting it, feel free to email her.
Right. Email me. It's jennifer@jkquilts.com. It's really tricky. It's spelled like Jennifer. Yeah, not a lot of weird spellings.
But yeah, so you can get it that way. But if you're having trouble, let us know. I know every month I get a lot of emails about...
And we're working on it, but there's a lot that goes into spam filters.
Yes, and sometimes your spam filters filter out a lot more than you think they should.
Right.
So,
and sometimes they don't filter out nearly enough. I get way too much email.
I get things where I'm like, how does this get through? But these things I want don't get through. It's amazing, for reals.
I kind of love it. You're like a third of the way through.
Well, this is 6 of 15
right.
fat quarters. So I'm doing 15 fat quarters, and I'm cutting them in groups of 3 because I'm a nerd. And that means I only have to cut 5 times.
I did mine in groups of 4, so I did 5 cutting.
But yeah, I am cutting with flannel, and so it is a little thicker. And the thing is, yes, you can cut in layers. No, you don't want to cut in a million layers because you lose accuracy.
Things are going to shift. So I don't think there's anything wrong with.
But these aren't tiny half-inch squares either, so it's.
But also, if you're going to cut layers, your blade needs to be sharp.
Yes.
If your blade's not sharp, it's not going to work. And here's a great way to test whether or not your blade is sharp. If you have to push,
you need a new blade.
You need a new blade. It should glide nicely. If you have to push hard, there was one day I was cutting and I'm like, wow, my shoulder's sore. And I was like, you idiot, put a new blade in. Because I was pushing like this. And I buy my blades like 10 at a time, so I always have new blades.
I'm the queen of waiting too long to replace a blade.
But, I'll see people a lot of times in classes and they're going like this or they're sawing. I'm like, it's time for a new blade.
Or to push hard enough that you don't have to saw.
Right.
Don't saw.
They're not made to saw.
It's not good for you, the fabric, or your fingertips that you will likely lose in the event of a sawing accident.
Right. Right. So, but anytime you're cutting through layers, multiple layers, you need to make sure you've got a nice...
flipping this upside down because the one on top, I know.
A nice sharp blade. I mean, it's like when we did our
kaleidoscope classes.
So they're going to have to cut through, 8 layers at a time. And one of the requirements, like, on our list of things you have to bring to class was a new blade.
Yeah.
Because
do not bring a used blade.
I didn't want to deal with used blades with that one because we were going to be cutting through layers. And whereas the kaleidoscope is like a stack and whack, accuracy really matters.
Yeah. It's like, I need you to accurately
So let's not saw.
So yeah, be careful. Rotary blades are great. We love rotary cutters. I'm so glad we're not still in the era of
scissors or
okay, guys, did you just see this? This is my favorite thing. We carry Quilter Select rulers, and we've become giant Quilter Select snobs.
I mean, maybe not snobs,
okay,
but
advocates.
Maybe we evangelize them a little bit.
Okay, but I'm going to show you why. This is flannel. Watch this. Guess what? It's still lined up perfect.
Right.
It's amazing. When I push this down, my ruler doesn't shift at all. And then I can just, see? And even here, I realized that I missed a spot. It's still there. It's still lined up. Then I can just slide it over out of the way.
Right.
All in a stack and come over and do it again.
Okay. Right. It's one of those things that once you start using them,
I know very few people who have bought one and been like, you know what? I like my other one better. I'm like,
Right, people buy one and then they're like one by one replacing
They're like,
all their
dang,
other ones.
now I need a new ruler for everything.
They really are.
They don't make the all the specific project type rulers.
Right, you're not going to find a
60
60-degree triangle or
and
45-degree
things.
triangle.
But as far as like the 6 by 24 or 8.5 by 24,
I swear my favorite's my 3 by 18. I am shocked at how much I use my 3 by 18.
I use it all the time, but I cut fat quarters sideways a lot, so
right.
Anyway, not to get too.
Now we're off topic. I
do
get questions with them about their yellow and not being able to see through them.
And the lines on them are very fine, which is different than most rulers.
You can see through them very well. And I do love how thin the lines are.
Because it means I can line up right on the line instead of, I know on some of my other rulers the question is what part of the line is the actual measurement. And if I'm using this one, well, that very thin dotted line, well, that's where it is. Like, there's no question about it. So it's, anyway, they've become a favorite of ours. We finally brought them in at the recommendation of another shop owner in the valley, actually. And I remember her telling me, like, she's like, I couldn't keep them on the shelves. And I was like, okay. Like, what's so special about these things? Then we brought them in, and we can't keep them on the shelves.
Right, right. They're in our orders every week.
They are really,
they're really awesome. And if you ever want to try one out, we have them at our cutting counters at the shop. Yes. So that is what we use.
And the girls at the shop, when they have to use one of the other rulers to cut fabric, they're like, they're like, where's the good one?
Where's the good one? I'm like, remember how
the other one is also
kind for like 20 years and you loved it? Yeah. Yeah.
But we're cutting these big pieces because, you know, we have all those tricks to not have our ruler slip so we don't, you know, do this and cut our finger off. And really the best trick is to have a good ruler that doesn't slip. I know they make the little gypsy handle things. Those aren't little, they're big. And
they are big.
All sorts of stuff like that. But seriously, this has been my best bet, and I've tried most of those things at some point. Jen's trying to hurry me through this. Okay, you guys, I've loved this line of flannels. They were so pretty. But my daughter's been wanting me to make her something out of them forever. And I didn't have a background flannel. So, here you go. Yeah, see,
you're solid. You're good.
Like to check.
I'm just going to sit here and watch her.
I know.
I'm making her work today.
Well, I guess you wrote the pattern, so it's almost
there. Yeah. But you know, it's also a fun, like, you know, like I said, like with this quilt, where I did this on the back.
Okay, you guys, or you could do it with 9 fat quarters and make it like crib quilt.
Right. But what I think is fun about this is because it's big piecing on the back. I get asked a lot about double-sided quilts, whether we can do that. Now, here's my feeling about it. If you want me to line up something perfectly,
I will not center a quilt back perfectly.
It's not possible. The way things adjust on a long arm, I can get the top where it goes, and I can pretty much get the sides where they go. I can't promise where the bottom's going to end up.
Because they stretch on separate rulers.
So, if you're going to do a quilt like this that is pieced on both sides, you need to decide which side, the lineup of it matters the most. And that's your top. Even if it's the bottom. I quilted a quilt for Stacy, who works with us a while ago. And she had done like the hexagon out of the layer cake on one side, and then used a B panel from
the same collection.
The same collection on the other side when it Deb strains bees. And so even though she intended
the panel to be the back,
I quilted it as the front because it was the one that needed to be smaller, and she could make the hexy one larger. And that's why this one won't look exactly like what it shows in my pattern, because I ended up trimming off this much because quilt backs need to be bigger than the top to be loaded on a long arm, or even for hand quilting. Like, I'm looking at grandma's old quilt frames, and the back has to be a bit bigger. So, yeah. So, that's how I did this one. But if you ever want to do a quilt where it's pieced on both sides, you totally can do it. What you need to do is indicate where the top center is. You're going to want to make sure the back goes probably at least an inch bigger on each side, because you can always add leaders and enders and runners on the sides, so you don't have to piece that far.
You don't have to add 4 inches.
You don't have to add 4 inches of your nice fabric. You know, you can make leaders and enders out of muslin and just sew it on,
or leftovers from another.
Or leftovers
or
from but
anything.
But
really.
you want the back to still be at least an inch bigger, so that I have some wiggle room.
Because it will never line up perfectly.
It will never line up perfectly.
Don't do it, it won't happen.
So, what I would say, if you want me to do that, or any long armor to do it, you need the back to be at least an inch bigger, and then add leaders and enders. Or in this case, I just had the back 4 inches bigger all the way around.
Yep. Those, I guess, are her leftovers.
Which are my leftovers. So I do have a few leftovers, but they're still attached to the back.
And these 3 are all like exactly the same
So
size.
you can totally do a 2-sided quilt. But those are the stipulations.
Also, I don't want 2 heavily pieced sided quilts.
No, and that's one.
The next thing is that one of the other sides needs to be simple.
If one of them has very small piecing and the other side has very small piecing, chances are a long arm is going to hit a pile where I've got 4 corners from one side and 4 corners from the other side, all hitting up in the same place, and that might be really hard for a needle to get through.
And it might break my needle.
Or it might break a needle, which might make a hole in the quilt, which would be very sad. So that's part of the reason that I felt good about doing this, is because you'll notice none of my intersections here have 4 corners.
Did you press open or to the side?
I pressed to the side because these are big pieces and it's faster.
Okay.
And then on this side, and then on this side as well, you'll notice none of my pieces really have like 4 corners. So these are pressed to the side, but
it's not bulky.
It's not really bulky anywhere. So at worst,
there's no pinwheels.
This spot right here might hit this spot right there, but my rectangles on the front are a different size than my rectangles on the back, and so they're much less likely to ever really intersect.
Yep.
So I guess I should say I thought this through as a long armor before I made it as a quilter, because
she was gonna have to long arm it.
I knew I'd have to long arm it.
Nice.
Which I think is helpful, and I share that with you not to be condescending to anybody who doesn't understand long arming. That's not my intention at all. It's to let you know what that side of this is. And even if you're going to quilt it on your domestic machine and not a long arm, it's hard to have things match perfectly, and even your domestic is going to have trouble getting through piles that are 12 layers of fabric thick.
Yes.
So, hey, look, she's like almost done cutting. I threw my rotary cutter on the ground.
Dropped my rotary cutter. Anyway, so this is going to be a quick, easy one. You guys, the pattern will be available in our newsletter.
Yeah.
And if we're really nice, we'll tell you where to find it outside of our newsletter later. Maybe.
But it's fun to have something that's quick and easy, but not necessarily tiny. Actually, these would be really fun out of some of the bigger flannels.
Yes.
We've got, it would be so cozy. We've got some new flannel coming very soon, which is very exciting.
Just miscut that.
Oh, whoops.
Okay.
And well, they can be your ends.
They will be my hands.
Liz, okay, so I'm going to tell you what she just did.
I just saw my selvage. I was like, wow, I had a lot extra.
She miscut this to be 10 inches. Now, remember how I said some of these rows you have to cut ½ an inch off of? She already did it. It's all done. We're just going to mark them as different.
They're my mess up pile, but they'll work.
So those are the ones she'll place first.
Yes,
so that's
and then we'll design the rest
of it
all around it. But it's only 3.
It's only 3 of them.
So it's totally workable.
And it's totally just fine. It's not going to be a problem at all.
See, I thought I was going good. I'm on top of things. Just kidding. Oh my gosh, you guys, we ordered new Tula Pink yesterday for her Curious or Incurious or
guys, there's Tula Christmas.
Tula Christmas. What's
flannel.
It called?
There's Tula Christmas flannel.
It's, oh my gosh.
It won't be till next year.
Yeah.
Y'all. Yeah, don't worry. We've already started ordering Christmas fabric for next year.
Seriously.
For a couple different companies.
Lately, and it's ordering Halloween and Christmas for
next year. But there's Tula Christmas flannel.
Yes.
And it's awesome.
It's awesome. You guys, her plaid, she's got a buffalo plaid
She
in
does
there.
have a buffalo plaid.
The name of the pattern is Check Yourself. I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I need it.
I love it.
Just for the name. So funny.
Right. So yeah, that's fun.
But this is my quilt, and I will, you guys know I post pictures of everything.
Right? Cassie, Tula Christmas, flannel.
Just be excited.
Just be excited.
We will have it. I'll let you know when you can order it from us someday.
We'll put pre-orders up.
Anyway, so I'm going to take this home, and what I'll do is I'll lay it all out on my design wall once I finish my candies, because William is giving me a hard time. My 4-year-old has come into my room at least 3 mornings in the last week and said, Mom, you need to do the candies so that you can finish your quilt. Like,
She's talking about the
missing
spooky sampler.
My spooky sampler. And my 4-year-old is insistent that the candies need to be done. And he keeps checking on me to see where I'm at.
Well, you better go make your candies. Well, after we do a newsletter.
Anyway, but thanks for joining us. We'll share our pattern, and you guys...
We'll have the newsletter out later today.
Seriously, guys, we cut it in 20 minutes. Not hard. You got this.
It's going to be great.
And now I have a smaller stack. It's not really a smaller stack.
No.
It's a less cumbersome stack.
But now you don't have to cut anymore.
I know.
Which is like half the battle.
Seriously.
All right.
For reals. Anyway, have a good one. We'll see you guys soon. And stay tuned for lots of fun things. If you have name ideas, let me know.